Iranians podcast, and we let you down? Do we not? We've got another cracker for you by way of a guest today, and it's the one and only Angella Nazarian. Is is that right?
You almost did it. You were almost there.
Yeah,
Nazarian.
perfectly just before. But obviously, stage fright got the best of me. So Angela, we'll stick with that for now, is a best-selling author, sought-after international speaker. She incorporates her training in psychology and teaching experience in creating dynamic and engaging speaking engagements and workshops. She's the co-founder and CFO of Visionary Women, which is a non-profit women's leadership organization in Los Angeles, which some people refer it to as Tehrangeles, that brings together some of the most dynamic thought leaders in the country. Angela has been mentioned and has been listed as one of the top 12 philanthropists in LA. She's been featured on CNN, in Elle, in Bloomberg, in Vogue, and in Forbes. Apart from the pronunciation of your surname, did I do you justice with that intro?
You certainly did. Thank you so much for having me on.
You're most welcome. So it seems quite pink where you are. So you're in LA, I'm in London. What's going on with the pink? Is that to be in solidarity with women, or what's the kind of pink connotation?
No, I love art, and that's a beautiful painting by Howardina Pindell, who's a female artist, actually. Very celebrated, and she's in her, I think she's 90 years old right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah.
And she's still all guns blazing in terms of doing art and everything else?
She still is. I think, she was not recognized for her important work early on, but in the past decade, there has been a reversal of what curators and art connoisseurs think as good art and innovative art. And she's in the ranks of Kusama, probably obviously not as well known, but she's a Black artist that was doing incredible work in the 50s and 60s, and now she's being rediscovered.
Got you. So let's delve into you and your background. Iranian American. So for the audience, tell us who the real Angela is behind all the philanthropy, behind the women's leadership.
Oh, I'm someone that likes to have fun. So the work that I do has to be engaging, that has to really speak to a place in me that feels like this is a fun activity to do, that it has to be challenging. I'm also very much into building relationships, whether really concentrating on my family. I'm very family oriented, or the tight knit group of friends that I have. I love the arts. I love dancing. I don't know I think everyone has different sides to them. So the Angela is many different Angelas that exist in me.
It's true. It's a case of reasonable adjustments. It's still you, but how you are with your family to how you are with your partner to how you are at work is different sides, and also the moods and the context and everything else. We're
Yeah.
multifaceted. Some people more so than others. You're a best-selling author as well as a speaker. Talk to me about what made you want to write a book and what the book was all about.
Well, I was a psychology professor for 13 years, and after teaching around, for 13 years to undergraduate classes, I felt like I wanted to do something different. The fact that I got married very young, I got married when I was 20 years old, and I had my kids very young. I feel that in some ways I went through my midlife crisis or midlife challenges in my mid 30s. My kids were at that time almost going to middle school, and I had more free time, and I felt that I don't want to do something that's rote and like every day the same thing. And at the time, I had a fantastic mentor who just died recently. She was also a psychologist, but was running personal development workshops. And I was telling her, her name was Carolyn. And I said, Carolyn, I think I just need something else in my life. And she looked at me and she said, why do you want to be a professor? I said, well, I don't necessarily need to be a professor. And told her that I really would love to delve in issues that dealt with adults' personal development. I went to the chair of the psychology department and told her that that's what I wanted to do. And she said, by all means, it's a great thing, but young kids in their early 20s, that's probably not where their focus is. So I went on and did adult personal development workshops for 6 years with a group of women that came almost every week. We had one dropout. So just imagine that these women were tackling the same things as I was going through, but I was doing it through the lens of psychology. And one of the things that we decided to do as a group, that each one of us had to pick up a skill that we weren't good at. One of the premises for really getting more excited about life and having that sense of aliveness is to do things that you have never relied on and try something new. So I started writing. I went to a writing class and I started writing my first book, which I didn't think it was a book at the time, just my experiences growing up in Iran and then coming to the States and my parents escaping Iran. And everyone in class kept on saying, this is an amazing story. Why don't you publish it? So I just thought, why not? If it happens, great. If it doesn't happen, that's fine, because I'm recording something that's very important for my kids. They were born in the US. They have no idea what my family went through. So it's a good legacy for my own family. And on my second pitch, I picked up a publisher, and actually it was one of the best sellers for them. And then my second and third book, I strayed away
What was
from
that
my.
book about? What's the title?
It was called Life as a Visitor. And what I tried to do was combine three things that were central in my life at the time. I was really talking about just the whole idea of identity and identity building through someone that lived in Iran and then lives on, in the West. How a lot of us immigrants are in between worlds and how we struggle with that. I also dealt with issues of what we now call trauma, but the immigrant experience is very tough, especially for Iranians, because many of them picked up and left their country within weeks. And so, what does it feel like when you don't say goodbye to half your family and never see them? What is it to come to a new world, to a new culture where a lot of us Iranians, I went to a bilingual school, but you have to pick up a new way of speaking, doing work. My parents were in Iran for 6 years or 6.5 years before I was reunited with them. So I was raised by my siblings, older siblings in the States. And what that experience taught me and how it was triggered when I was raising my own kids. Because when they turned 11 and I came to the States at age 11, um, I suddenly realized how young I was and the things that I was dealing with versus, a normal 11-year-old child living in the States. It's completely different. So I think it was a shared experience by people my story is no different than anybody else's. It's just a different variation, but it's a communal shared experience for Iranians.
Yeah, really fascinating. And it's a common theme. I have a good friend in California, and he was talking about how his grandma raised him more than his own mum, and others that have had to go from one country to another country where families have been split apart. Maybe mum and dad couldn't get out or something, but there was a relative in the United Kingdom or in the US, most often a very close relative, that would be there so that they could raise their child, because they didn't want them during the time of the war, of the Iran-Iraq war, if they were of a certain age or the height of that kind of revolutionary period. And it's caused a lot of issues as well, because families have been split, they've been torn. Mum has been more grandma, grandma's been more mum, and different types of siblings and different types of relationship taking on roles where you ordinarily wouldn't have taken. And it is an experience that the community after 45 years does share. And it's interesting about the fact psychology rules the waves now when it comes to social media.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating concept that I find in the world of coaching and dealing with people in careers and stuff, because everything starts in the mind, and 80% of life is mindset. After all, often we're the ones getting in the way of us. What made you? So you're a young mum, and you've gone through a legacy in your background with your parents, you've come, United States, etc., as an immigrant. What made you then decide, actually, I want to embark on a career in psychology and teach?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think very early on, I think most people go into fields that they feel like they get attracted to because it serves them in some way. So I would have to say, in retrospect, psychology was interesting to me because I wanted to get to know myself better, pure and simple. Um, I was raised in a very traditional family, and although the boys in our family, I'm one of five, and I have three brothers, um, were studying to become doctors. It wasn't really an expectation for the girls to do anything in particular except marry and have kids, which is very honorable anyway. But um, I think having been raised by my own siblings and, my brothers, and my sister's a very intelligent person as well. But she got married at 19 and had a baby at 20 and never got a chance to finish school. I was the first female in my family to have gone to college. And when I finished college, I didn't even know if I was going to be working at all. But 6 months having had my first child, I went to David, my husband, and I said, I was a undergraduate faculty member even when I was a graduate student. I said, I miss being around people. I miss being stimulated. And the best thing about being a professor is that if you're part-time, especially, is that you choose your hours. A lot of the preparation time is at home. So at that time, I felt that it fit into my lifestyle in a very nice way. But once the kids got older, I felt that I could really commit my time to something even more important. And that's where I almost work full time now. But, I enjoy having an identity of my own. I enjoy testing how far I can take something. It's very rewarding. It can be challenging, but it's very rewarding. And I get to meet a lot of people that I wouldn't have. So, oftentimes I get asked, who are your mentors? And I feel that given the confinement of, where we live and all that, the fact that I wrote two books on visionary women and trailblazing women, I got to talk to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I got to interview Nobel Prize laureates. How amazing is that? They became my mentors in some way.
Yeah. And it's true what you say about, at times, you're attracted to something that might relate to you and you're seeking something. Sometimes for people, they seek Finns because of money, because they've come from a certain background where money was always an issue, or money was always the problem, or money was the cure, money was the Finn to have happiness. So they were very driven financially. So they went to careers and industries which were seen as highly rewarding, like financial services, etc.
Right.
But that doesn't give you fulfillment, does it? It just gives you freedom and options and choices. When it comes to psychologists, I mean, one of them, I had a bit of a brain freeze in terms of his name. Don't know why, because I've seen him all over social media. So I was checking him out on the Google. For those of you watching the YouTube, thinking where my eyes were wandering, and it's Jordan Peterson. What's your thoughts about him and women? Because
Jordan
he's not
Peterson?
Jordan Peterson.
Peterson,
The
I
guy.
don't know him.
Really?
No, I don't know him.
Why?
And
He's a
I read a
famous.
lot. I mean, I'm constantly reading. I'm glad
Yeah,
that you're introducing me to someone that I don't know.
Yeah, he's like huge on social media. He's like got millions and millions of followers. He's all over everything. He's very much a psychologist turned influencer and written a lot of books and stuff. But he's got a huge following from men.
For men, I see.
Yeah, and he does take on feminists at times and talks
Uh-huh.
about where you know men, what their issues are in terms they have the highest suicide rates, etc. And he then goes into it, and he's drawn that kind of following from guys to his kind of content. So I do recommend him in terms of you just seeing what his content is in terms of what you're coming from a psychology point of view. Otherwise, we could have had a debate about what you think of him or not. But so you've been the first lady in your family to go to university, from my understanding, and then you decided to take that a notch further and try to intertwine that with being a mum and doing the part-time professor gig. It's interesting that when you're talking, you mention, well, every Iranian parent's dream, oh, my brothers were doctors, because Iranian parents, they always want their kids to be doctors, lawyers, surgeons, all that kind of stuff. Anything else, you're a loser. But
That's true. It's true.
so, but I've spoken to a few people where it seems like there's a lot of success in particular families. So I'll hear from someone who is an eye surgeon saying, yeah, my brother's also this really successful doctor, and my other. So is it nurture or is it nature in
I
terms
think
of
it's
this
both.
success?
I definitely think it's both. I think within our family, my brother is a nuclear cardiologist, one of the youngest professors at UCLA. My other brother
Stop
is
it!
a dentist.
You're putting, you're rubbing the
No,
salt in.
no, and my sister, having given a chance, when in Iran, when they would do the exams, they had entrance exams for college, right? And she placed number one in the entire country um, for literature and writing. So I do think that obviously you have to have some talents, but our family was based on a standard of excellence. And you oftentimes see that in a lot of, Chinese families, Indian families, where they say that, don't be afraid of hard work. If anything you want, you need to put work behind it, even if you're talented. And I think early on, especially my father was someone, I think a lot of kids live the unlived life of their parents. That's a famous Jungian expression from Carl Jung. And it really means that my father was probably one of the most brilliant and extraordinary men, but because his father passed away very young, he had to start working at age 16 to support his family, two sisters and a mom. he always wanted to be a doctor. He was, so, I think that that kind of value system, it gets passed down to the kids. And I bet you a lot of Persian families have engineers and doctors. It's because early on, whether it was communicated directly or indirectly, it was the standard of excellence that you need to rise to that level. At the same time that it's good, I have to say, like in our culture, people who were artistic, that had artistic means or wanted to be artists, were very much, discouraged and looked down upon. And I feel that there were a lot of stifled souls because they wanted to do something very creative, which was not tied to knowledge or financial gain, and it wasn't looked at very highly. So it was really discouraged. So there's two edges to that. There's a
Yeah.
plus and a shadow side to that as well.
Yeah, yin and yang.
Yeah.
Um, so, I mean, when it comes to Iranians, I don't know if you agree with this, but individually brilliant, brilliant for others, not so much together
Why do
as
you
a
say
team.
not together? It depends, actually.
Just generally speaking, I find that Iranians can be brilliant as an individual and brilliant when working for a company or working in other kind of things, but when coalescing together at times, I suppose I'm probably referencing politics more. That together, not always easy to work as a team
Mm,
players in terms of collaborating, lifting each other up, elevating one another. You know, a lot of there is always that peacock effect in certain cultures. You have it in Greek culture, Turkish culture,
mm,
Indian culture. Look at my house, look at my car. Look how much more I
mm.
spent more money on this wedding on my daughter and this and that. That's kind of these kind of traits that happen. Okay, but for in the Jewish community at times they've been brilliant because they got it's this famous expression: if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. And despite their differences, which there are many, they've understood that through collaboration leads to excellence and you win together. And I
Right.
just feel like sometimes with Iranians, although brilliant, maybe it's because of the trauma, maybe it's because of those 45 years of the revolution, that that sense of collaboration hasn't always been there. It's been more competition.
Um, I guess I'm not sure if I have the same view. I do think that they're highly entrepreneurial and self-determined. So, some of the most successful entrepreneurs have been Iranian. So that trait has been great for them. But I would say they have teamwork. Maybe they don't, like a lot of the founders of these tech companies are Iranian and they had to work with other people. It's
Yeah, but
just that it's not
that's for
necessarily,
others.
yeah,
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying within the community.
within
For
the
others,
community.
absolutely, totally agree with you. The founder of eBay or Uber, or there's lots of
Yeah.
examples, and they had to have that ability to bring teams together. 100%, 100% on board. What I'm saying is, within the community, there hasn't always been that team ethos.
Okay.
It's been
Well,
more.
I think that it's also splintered by different views. And, there's, within like Los Angeles, I can say there is a nonprofit called Farhang Foundation that brings people because they agree that cultural things, Iranian culture is important, then they come together. It's one of the biggest nonprofits for Iranians. But, within that, there's like so many different viewpoints on things. The younger generation, some of them say, well, we're in the States, it doesn't really matter to us. Some of the other ones say, no, you need to know your roots. I think it's just different ways of dealing with how you want to live your life after the revolution with different viewpoints, you know? And I do think that politics plays a part. I think, Some people want to just forget about it and live a life that's really centered around, their new life here in the States. Some of them don't. And then some of them are they're very focused on establishing themselves. And maybe when your priority is being well established, your priority is yourself at first and then for others.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because when you have to look, a lot of Iranians left Iran not out of choice. The vast
No.
majority was out of need.
Yes.
And they became tremendously successful, especially in the United States. Maybe less so in Europe at times, in terms of the levels of success that you see in like California and the United States. But then that's the American dream that people allude to and think big and grow rich. And also the fact that United States is a fairly new country in comparison to
Yeah.
Europe. You know, they always say here, it's old money in Europe, new money
Yeah.
in countries like Australia and US. And I suppose when you're trying to survive, and I think Iranians are great survivors. History shows you that through the Mongols, through
Yeah.
Alexander, through the Arab conquests. They've always survived, and then they've gone on to thrive because they're adaptable too.
Yeah.
And as population, as in terms of immigrants moving abroad, I think the Iranian kind of expat population, wherever they've gone, they've really got involved and have been an asset to that country. You know,
100.
they're they're not one of a group which is or an ethnicity which they haven't really embraced it. They haven't really got involved in it. Or I find that Iranians, wherever they've gone, they've fully embraced the countries that they've been in and have been a huge, huge asset.
They have been. I mean, just looking at California or Los Angeles, we're a minority group that has achieved so much. We've actually changed without exaggeration, the landscape of LA business. Our And I do think that there's a couple of things that come with it. I mean, one is that they're highly entrepreneurial, and US lends itself to a free market economy where it encourages you to take risks and do things, start up businesses. The other part is that Iranians are, without just being stereotypical, but they're just very smart. They're very smart and very resourceful, and they came with some level of money, so it's not like other immigrant groups like the Vietnamese that came with zero. um, so that helps, at least having some footing makes a difference. A lot of the Iranians were studied abroad. They were very well aware of the Western culture. They relied on a very rich and ancient culture and family system and network and support system. So all these things really help a person thrive in a new environment. The fact that we right away set up a community that could support each other, that's a lot. That's why they get attracted to going to the same city. It it lended itself to a very intricate support system.
Why do you think so many Iranians went anywhere? It was anywhere around the world that they could have gone, and US was probably a much further point than say London or Paris, or that they converged much greater numbers
Mhm.
in Los Angeles. Why? The
It's
weather?
Los Angeles and New York, but Los Angeles is definitely
Yeah.
more. For my family's perspective, I mean, I had two brothers that were studying in Los Angeles. One was doing his postdoctoral work at Cedar Sinai in Los Angeles, and the other one going to Beverly Hills High School. So we came where my brothers were. But when you think about it, Iranians would like to go to metropolitan areas. If you're going in the States, it's either New York or Los Angeles. Los Angeles has far better weather. I mean, really, on most of the days it's sunny and beautiful. It's just easier living. And once a few families went there, a lot of people decided to go where their families are. So they all wanted to congregate together, which made for this kind of support system and microculture that you see in Los Angeles. But I bet you weather had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, because it's absolutely rotten when it comes to London. You know, grey skies, grey, wind, wet, my worst combinations of weather, and you put that into a 5 month period, you know, it kind of would get you a bit
It
down.
gets you.
Yeah, sad
How do
syndrome.
you live? How do you live in, I every time I've visited London, it's always been gray and rainy.
Yeah, I mean, through global warming, one of the benefits has been the weather's changing here slightly, so you're getting a little bit more sun and hotter climates. But generally speaking, like today is an absolute rotter, just wet, 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 and grey as hell. I think a lot of people like to go on holidays, so they'll go to like Spain and Italy and have as many breaks as you
Yeah.
can to top up those vitamin D levels. But it sounds like a city thing, but the weather does have a part because it does affect your mood, and especially if you're in a country where there is a lot of sun, then you're kind of going to gravitate to that. Um, so, women leadership is a big thing for you,
Yeah.
and you do a lot around that.
Hmm.
And is that because a bit like why you took up psychology, it struck a chord?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I thought for my second and third book, my second book was called Visionary Women. I mean, my second book was called Pioneers of the Possible. And then third, Visionary Women. I really did an in-depth research on women leaders from all over the world, from different cultures, in different disciplines. And I really wanted to understand what made them thrive and become such trailblazers, even if they were in different countries: Africa, Iran, the Far East, Middle East, and the US, of course. And to me, it was just understanding, what makes someone successful, what makes someone do things that nobody else has thought of.
What
And
does make someone successful? Because this is the
there's
holy
a
grail
few,
that so many people search for on TikTok and Instagram.
right. So there's a few takeaways. Number one is that highly successful men and women, so it's not only for women, highly successful men and women build a life around their strengths. Now, women, in the case of women, there's so much in this self-improvement movement that you just keep on focusing on your weaknesses and trying to improve that. But actually, when you look at the top leaders, female leaders, they're not really so interested in figuring out their weaknesses, but they really know their strengths. So their whole life is based on their strengths. I think that's a huge thing to say. It's like feeling good enough, worthy enough, all of those things they don't really care. And they're very flawed people. It's not that they're not. They're just flawed people who have less neurosis to keep changing, wanting to change their weaker aspects of their personality. Um, the
Is
other
that
thing is that they
is that
rely on,
because yeah, sorry, is that because trauma and a certain background is one of the catalysts to success? I'll tell you why. Some examples. Oprah Winfrey came
yeah,
from quite an abusive background. Elon Musk has real issues with his dad. Apparently, he was
oh
a
yeah,
horrible person. Trump is obsessed about being called a loser because his dad said nothing worse, Donald, than being a loser in life. Um, and you've got a lot of examples of highly successful people that their constant pursuit for greatness is because they either have something they want to prove, either to themselves or to others, or is because of a reflection of where they came from.
I agree with you. I mean, if you're looking at off the charts people who are innovators and leaders, they oftentimes have had a real challenge, a real wounding of sorts, where they were able to see how resilient they are, and in some ways unconsciously driven to show their worth in other ways. So sometimes, it's not like the most balanced people, are not the ones that are spending 20 hours a day working, right? If you're really balanced, probably your need for those things is much lower, much lower. So there's a very big theory around that kind of what you're saying, that there's always a wounding or a hole that propels you to put so much energy towards something um, that's outside of yourself.
Yeah, you make some really fascinating points, especially about the weakness part, because people, and I've said this before to others when I've been coaching people obsess too much about weakness and they
Mhm.
spend too much time on it with limited success, actually. You know,
That's what I say.
you always want to improve in life, but what really gets you there is what you said. It's about taking your strengths and making them stronger as opposed to just focusing on weaknesses. Instead, I think the seeker of the source is realizing this is my weakness. And actually, is there someone else much better than me at it? Maybe I don't like to do IT. I'll get someone to do IT. I don't really like to do accounts. I'll get a really amazing accountant. Or I don't like to do video content. I'll do video kind of some kind of person who's involved in kind of bringing up these and drawing up these videos because it saves my time. In terms of they're very mindful of productivity and return on time.
Absolutely. You
Yeah,
have to be very self-aware, for one thing. You have to be very self-aware. As a coach, I'm sure you've talked to many executives. Like, executives are there to really surround themselves with the smartest people. They know that they're not good at a certain thing, so they have to compensate for it by having other people to make up for that weakness. If you're putting your energy towards something that you don't enjoy or not good at, you're not going to have the results that you want to have.
that's so true. I mean, I've been doing global headhunting for 26 years, placed over 3,000 people globally. And I'm amazed at times as well that I've had people say to me, Johnny, we've got leaders, but they can't lead. So they get a ton of money from a VC fund or private equity, and then they go into market and they find real problems or issues because they haven't either climbed the ropes in terms of necessarily learning the skills that you've had to learn through in maybe climbing that career ladder, and they don't have that EQ level in terms of bringing out the best in people, but they have the kind of maverick mindset or idea in terms of taking on the world or wanting to be a disruptor, but they don't have the qualities to lead. And I think a lot of companies fail if the leadership at the top isn't right because culture is set at the top.
Yes. Yes, that's very true. That's very true.
So for you've done a lot actually. Being a young mum, become a professor in psychology, written not just one book but 3 books.
Four,
Um,
four,
Amazing, isn't it?
four.
4, right? 4 books. I did the book. I've done a book. I didn't like it. I mean, what do you prefer more, speaking or writing?
Um, I'm sure that, if you're doing headhunting, you do these personality tests, which is like the
Yeah.
Myers-Briggs. And the interesting thing for me is that I'm an adapted introvert. So I'm really right on the border of introvert, extrovert. I really enjoy my time alone. So the reading and the writing is really wonderful. And then when you go into promoting the book, it's all about speaking, or, I have a very public life with the nonprofits that I lead. So it's more about being with people. Which one do I enjoy? Probably speaking, but I really have to limit that because I feel like I need some alone time. Too much of being in front of people is an energy drain for me.
Yeah, it's that great quote, isn't it? Have you ever watched the film Heat?
No.
It's
Heat?
another one. Heat. No Jordan Peterson. Heat, as in the
Hmm.
film with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino.
No, I haven't seen it, but those are my favorite actors. I'm
Yeah.
gonna write it down.
But there's a scene. He's at a bar, Robert De Niro, and he's talking to a young lady, and she says, "Oh, um, are you lonely?" And he goes, "No, I'm alone, but
Mhm.
I'm not lonely."
Yeah.
And I think for me, I agree with you. I get so much enjoyment out of my own company. Not because I love myself, but I just want my own company. Because at times there is a peace, there's a tranquility. You can gather your thoughts. There's not, you don't have to, do this, do that at times in certain situations. You can just be you, which sometimes we forget when you're a parent or you're a provider and stuff, that we forget our own self. Um, what's the dream?
What's the dream? You see, I think my dream has changed. I mean, one of the things is that, when I co-founded Visionary Women 10 years ago, my dream was that every year, first of all, I wanted to build a platform for female leaders here in Los Angeles. And we are doing that. We are doing that. It's been a lot of hard work. But the other part was that I wanted to form a community that was learning together and then giving money together. So having collective power to really change things. Um, and with that, I've had incredible speakers. I mean, we just finished our International Women's Day conference. We had, Gwyneth Paltrow with the ambassador, Nicole Lavant come and speak. We had Sharon Stone. We had this woman, Dr. Edith Eckler, who at age 94 wrote a book. She's an Auschwitz survivor. She was incredible, just incredible. Um, and my dream has been that every year we give $1 million away to various nonprofits, and we're almost closing in on that. I think as I'm moving into a different stage, I really want to build this nonprofit so it goes to a younger generation. My other one, also looking beyond, is the same. That I feel like I want to nurture the younger women to take on the work. And I'm not necessarily interested in taking the limelight. I want other people to be part of it. As you said, if you want to go far, you take other people with you. You go together. And I don't think that I want to travel more, but I want more personal time at this stage in my life. I feel like, I've had uh, you know, 20 years of a lot of outward facing work. And I think that's my dream. To enable other people to do the work that I'm doing, to inspire other people to do that, keep growing the nonprofit, but at the same time have time, more personal time for myself.
Yeah, because what affects you in your personal life has a big effect on your professional life. They're so interconnected. Um, are you happy?
I am. I am. I'm deeply happy and I'm very blessed.
And it's such an important thing because so many people struggle with that question. They either pause or they start to question. Because I don't know if you agree with me, I think in order to be happy, you need to be fulfilled and need to have a fulfilling life and to have fulfilled your own potential in who you are, what you're about. Um, but in order to have that, the key is to have the courage to do it.
True. And I feel that, growing up, I never, like, happiness was not mentioned. This is not a Persian thing to say, we want you to be happy.
No.
So I think growing up, it was not like happiness wasn't the priority. And I think chasing it is probably not the right thing, because the more you chase it, the more elusive it is. But happiness is a byproduct of doing things that are important to you, that have meaning, that energize you. I think in my women's courses, I used to say, instead of even concentrating on happiness, do you wake up feeling alive? That sense of aliveness. Joseph Campbell always talked about that, is that people are yearning to feel alive. And do we wake up with that sense of, oh, today is like this and that? You know, there'll be some things that you don't want to do, but in the sense, do you have that life force running through you? Do you have that life force that, you know, opens your heart, and you have this tremendous energy to go through your days with a sense of hopefulness? That to me is happiness, probably.
The issue is, I think, to have all of that, you have to have freedom. Because
In what
if
way?
you, I would say, in quite a few aspects. Number one is, if you feel like you haven't got a sense of freedom, like financially, for example, where you don't have freedom of options, freedom of choice, you then are stuck in the golden cage where you're doing something you really don't want to do, but you're doing it because it's a means to an end. It provides food on the table. It pays the rent. It pays the mortgage. And it 1 year becomes five becomes 15. And then people think, oh, when I'm 65 and retired, I'm going to do all the things that I really want to do in life, and to be done with it. I've done my bit. I've brought up my kids and everything else. Did I really love what I did? Not really, but it paid for our lives. It paid for our ways. And the problem is, when you're young, you got less money generally, but you got a lot more time, a lot more health. When you get older, you have more money generally, but you have
Mhm.
less time, less health. And you're lucky at the age of about 65 or 70. Most people, about 75% of people or more, have one health condition of some description. So this kind of proverbial, I'm going to do and travel the world at a certain age, because that is my freedom. That's what I'm aiming at. It's unfortunately, it doesn't always happen. And in fact, at times, for people, they thought it would, and then the reality is quite the opposite. That's why I think freedom, to be free, I think the ultimate thing in life is to be free, to have freedom of choice. Like today, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. Like, that's why I think a lot of entrepreneurs become entrepreneurs, because I don't think they do well with authority,
Mhm.
right? They want to be in charge. They want to be in control, generally speaking, and they want to be free. They want to have freedom. They want to be free rather than that army of ants. We've
Right.
created a lot of societies where governments and systems rely on the army of ants because they pay a lot of taxes, etc., to do what it takes. And then the social contract is, you work for 35 years, you might get a pension of sorts, which often in London is hardly anything, and then you'll be able to enjoy yourself and to be free. And I think the ones that really have that awareness and understanding that tomorrow is not a given, is not promised, understand that actually, no, I want to have more of a free life in terms of freedom of options and choices.
And I do think that freedom is I agree that freedom is very important, especially, I mean, money can give you the option of a lot of easing a lot of things. But here's my psychology hat coming in, is that also freedom is an internal state. It's very internal. I know lots of people who are very well off and secure in their lives, and they have the option of being free, and yet they're not. Also, you know, going to Cambodia, or especially in India, I saw that a lot, Johnny, where people live on $1 a day. I visited the slums, but you also saw a certain kind of joy and happiness vibrating from them, and they don't have those circumstances. So I always ask, what is it that they they have that they're at peace, or they're okay with what they have? And the past few years I've been really thinking about the idea of acceptance of what is. And also the whole idea, I think the hardest spiritual work to do is the letting go. Letting go, I think, for me is probably the spiritual work for me as a human being. Letting go of frustrations, letting go of things that didn't work out, or anger, um, negative mindsets. If we're truly able to let go of certain things, how unconfined we would be. So the whole idea of freedom to me has become something very internal. Granted, because I also don't have to worry about, I'm not in a survival state to think about where's my next meal. But I do think that that's also very important too. That there's some people that radiate a certain kind of vibration because I think they have learned how to deal with life's everyday challenges in a more graceful way, with more grace.
Yeah, really fascinating. And that internal peace, your mental health is priceless.
Yeah.
And some people never get that.
No.
Like we had a famous pop figure here called Amy Winehouse.
Oh, yes, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah.
Um, Successful, great voice, but she just couldn't wrestle her demons, and
Right.
it got the better of her.
Yeah.
And I think for some as well, it's a case of it's never enough.
Right.
So if it's never enough, you can't then be truly fulfilled, and therefore you can't be happy. That
Right.
leads to greatness in terms of like, right, next spin, next spin, next spin. But if you never reach that point where it's enough,
Yeah.
I think that will always wrestle with you in a way where you won't find that internal peace.
I agree. I think that's where we see that people who are highly, like Elon Musk, he doesn't seem like a very happy person, but he
No.
sure is changing humanity. He's doing something that may benefit the rest of us, but his vision and what he wants to do surpasses his own personal happiness. Some people may not, that's not their priority, maybe.
Well, there was that clip of Elon Musk where he was interviewed about the fact that a lot of Silicon billionaires like Jeff Bezos and stuff, and the Google founders, one of which found out he's got propensity to get Parkinson's. So he created a company with Abby V called Calico to all about longevity and
Yes.
aging. Um, and they asked, are you gonna? Do you want to live forever? Do you want to live longer? And he usually pauses when he's in deep thinking, so there's like those few seconds before he responds. He goes, no, and the person, so are you frightened of death? And he said, no, it'll come as a relief.
Mm, that's a profound answer.
Yeah, and it because often people who do great things, you talked about art, so many great artists, they were somewhat,
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
And they had their demons, but it led to greatness. So as we come towards the end of the podcast, what legacy do you want to leave? We've spoken about these individuals. You've got a very calm demeanor about you. You've got this kind of grace and inner sense of self, which I can see has led to the success that you've had. But what would you like to leave in terms of legacy and impact?
Personal legacy, I would have to say that I was a good human being. Personal legacy. Just being a good human being, that I lived a life the best that I could with kindness, and that I cared about the people around me. And I wasn't afraid to try new things. That's the coolest part. I got to do I've been able to do a lot of interesting things because I was, I wasn't afraid of trying.
Yeah, I love that. And sometimes people struggle with difference and legacy because they associate it with Elon Musk and sending rockets into space, or Jeff Bezos taking on the world, or someone who's big and grand. But we all make a difference. We make a
Yeah, we
difference to
do.
our family. We make a difference to the person that we encounter in the street just by having a smile, engaging in a conversation with an elderly person who hasn't spoken to someone all day. And we forget that. Last question.
Yeah.
What's been your most valuable lesson in life?
Um, I think that was the whole thing, I do have to say, many years ago, I had a burglar in my house and many of my things were stolen. And it brought up some of the things that I was thinking about with my parents, how, they left everything, like everything was left, and they came, and what did they have to deal with? And then you lose your identity. Like my father lost his identity as who he was in Iran, comes here. So I think for me, the whole idea when I was saying letting go is this idea of not being terribly attached or working with when things are taken away, or, as we grow older, I think your health won't be the same. I mean, there's many things. There's just dealing with change. The whole idea of letting go to me is just very fascinating, that I want to work on ever more intently on it, because I think we're all on a journey of change. We're going to change. Even what we want in life will change through decades. Um, the kind of relationships that we want to invest in changes. So that has been the biggest aha thing, where don't sweat the small stuff. Think about the bigger concepts and what really truly makes a difference in your life. And sometimes not focusing on the minutia. Take that 10,000 mile view from up above and see the scope of things. That's a bleep in your life.
Yeah, I love that. Is that great quote from the Kung Fu Panda of all people? Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is mystery. Today is a gift. That's why it's called the present. And
Yes,
it's one of the most beautiful quotes that
it
I've ever
is.
come across. Well, I've really enjoyed the conversation, Angela. Thank you ever so much for your time there in LA. How do people reach out to you in terms of your book, especially future women leaders, people in the community, etc.?
Well, through my website, angelanazarian.com, or through Instagram, which is Angela Nazarian with 2 L's.
Yes, with 2 L's. Well, Khairi Mamoon, thank you ever so much.
Merci.
It's been great, and this has been Successful Iranians.
Thank you so much.